Welcome to Women Don't Do That, where we empower you with inspiration, knowledge, and skills to redefine your boundaries and unleash your potential. I'm Stephanie Mitton, founder and CEO of Beacon North Strategies and your guide. Small town girl turned CEO while navigating career, motherhood, ADHD, and chronic migraines. Our conversations range from interviews with visionary women to solo episodes filled with actionable insights. We are your hub for turning what ifs into let's go. Are you ready to redefine your possible? Let's get started. Today on the podcast, I am so thrilled to welcome guest interviewer Rachel Curran, a distinguished public affairs strategist and former director of policy to the Prime Minister of Canada. She has advised the highest levels of government and now leads public policy for Meta in Canada. Welcome, Rachel. I'll turn it over to you to tell us more about what we are talking about today.
Thank you, Stephanie, and it's great to be here today with both of you. So today we're going to talk about a new initiative that Stephanie and Natasha have launched to young female entrepreneurs, and it's a real privilege to talk to both of you and hear a little bit about the work you're doing. So I'd like to hear about this new initiative you've launched. So the story from kind of conception to launch and what you're working on now. And, how does it represent kind of women betting big on themselves, since it seems like that's what you two are doing with this. So why don't we start with Stephanie?
Sure, absolutely. Maybe I'll start with where the idea first started, and then maybe Natasha, you can jump in with some of the framing about what the event is about. And the initial idea came from seeing an opportunity in the space, that there was a gap for professional development for folks in public affairs, and seeing an opportunity to launch a new initiative. And in a very Ottawa fashion, the idea was first pitched to Natasha in a bar in downtown Ottawa. And I was so pleased that she was willing to go on this journey with me. And we've created this partnership. And, at the very beginning, you're having those conversations about, is this a good idea? Is it a viable idea? And testing it with people, and then leading to where we are today. With that, Natasha, maybe I'll turn it over to you to talk more about kind of broadly, like, what are we doing here?
Absolutely. And I'm so grateful that you pitched this to me in a bar, like true, Ottawa fashion. I think where, for me, the real intention behind trying to go big in this is that, as Stephanie had mentioned, there's been a gap in the Ottawa market in terms of trying to cultivate and support and mentor young professionals who want to get into this crazy space we call public affairs, or GR. And so with the lines of work that Stephanie and I are focused on, youth empowerment, supporting other women, we thought, what a beautiful way to do something to kind of give back to the community. So on May 21st, we are launching our very first initiative, where we are going to put together a half-day summit called NextGen, Shaping the Future of Public Affairs Today. So it's going to be a crash course learning exercise for maybe some professionals that have been in this space for a little while, but really geared more towards young professionals that are either finishing grad school or maybe have been dabbling in the public affairs space, and giving them a bit of a refresher and an update on what does public affairs look like. So we're going to be talking about, how do you prepare your boss for budget cycle? Looking at a full calendar year. What are the dates that you need to focus on? What are some tools and tactics that you can use to support you in public affairs? And we have some fantastic speakers, which we'll talk about later. We'll be looking at transition. So we know there's going to be an election for sure next year, if not sooner. So how do you prepare for that? What are the do's and don'ts? And probably my favorite panel, and I'm a little biased here, is women in GR. So who are some of the champions that are every day breaking that glass ceiling and really trying to focus in on younger women in this space that want to get into the public affairs landscape? For me personally, I love to give back in the community. I think it's so incredibly important. And if we can hopefully find even some job placements for some of these young professionals in some of these larger firms, what a great way to support those young professionals that want to get into this space.
That's fantastic. That sounds like not just fascinating content, but also really useful content for professionals operating in the GR space. So this event is called NextGen. So why did you feel you needed an event like this? Did you see a gap in the market? Was something missing? I mean, you guys have both been working in Ottawa for many years. What prompted this event in particular?
Years ago, I remember when I first was working in public affairs earlier on in my career, there were some courses that you could take. And I think there was a version of this that kind of existed. We have some really strong national associations right now that do important work, but there's not like an annual ongoing event in Ottawa for this kind of thing. And also that's very, like you talked about, Rachel, it has a practical element to it. So for me, it's about knowledge, but it's also about skill sets and practical application. We're doing some workshops. So it's not just the type of conference that we normally see where people are just talking at you, but you actually get to think about how you're going to use this information in your developing skills. And we go to a lot of conferences in Ottawa, at a lot of events, and we're constantly learning about often policy topics or important issues. And this really gets into the professional development of people in public affairs, and that we don't have. Natasha, did you want to add to that?
I think I'll just layer in the piece that, look, we're still suffering from the negative ramifications of COVID, right? We've been stuck behind computers. We've been stuck in our little cocoons, whether it be in our, our condos and our homes and our offices. So we still see that there's a strong demand, especially in Ottawa, to get out, to network, to feed off each other's energy. So we also see this as a great networking opportunity for all the vested parties that will be participating in this event. And while there's no shortage of receptions and events happening in Ottawa, I think that the intent around this is really geared towards those young professionals, because they wouldn't otherwise, I think, have the chance to come out and hear from some of these very well-known either ex-politicians or well-known lobbyists and public affairs professionals that are shaping the policy landscape in this country.
That's fantastic. So you guys seem very well positioned to do something like this, given your own backgrounds. So you've both set up your own public affairs consulting firms. Tell us a little bit about your professional journeys, your professional careers. So how did you decide to start your own businesses? That's a pretty scary prospect for a lot of people.
It's even more scary if you could think, Rachel. I started it during COVID. I was telling somebody that the other day, and they were like, why would you do such a crazy thing? I think it was a culmination of a number of things. I'm a very creative person and I love solving problems. And so I love owning my own firm. And so when I do come up with these big, bold ideas like NextGen, I don't have to convince somebody that this is a good idea. I can jump with it and run with it and make it happen. And I love being able to do that and to serve clients also while doing that. And the other personal connection to this as well is, although I love running a business and I love helping clients, I also have a chronic medical condition. And so being an entrepreneur also allows me that type of flexibility that I need in terms of the work that I'm doing. So I can continue to do the work that I love and also create some space to take care of myself as well.
Amazing. Thanks, Stephanie. Natasha, what about you? How did you start your own firm?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And it's funny because looking back, I didn't realize I was an entrepreneur until it was one of those aha moments. So for me, I lived in Toronto. I had a really great opportunity to move to the nation's capital to open the first satellite office for a national organization, that being the Economic Club of Canada. And within 6 months, we were doing, up to 3 events a week, hosting heads of states, most of Prime Minister Stephen Harper's cabinet for major policy speeches. And I did that for a number of years. I built a great brand in Ottawa and took that across the country. So did some cross-Canada tours, helped facilitate the opening of the Alberta office, did some events on the West Coast. So things were going really, really well. I had certainly found my niche and my calling, so to speak. The same night that I was nominated for Businesswoman of the Year, this would have been, gosh, I think in 2016, correct me if I'm wrong, around 2016, my mom was diagnosed with cancer completely unexpectedly. And it was a serious cancer. It's multiple myeloma. And after a bunch of different tests and bouncing between different hospitals, she was eligible for a clinical study and clinical trials rather at Princess Margaret, and it would have required a caregiver. So there was no doubt in my mind. My mom's my best friend. We talk about mentors. She is my greatest mentor. I left the club temporarily to go be her caregiver. During that process, it was a month of basically sitting vigil next to her bed, wondering, is she going to take to the stem cell transplant? I realized life is really short. And I know this sounds cliche, but really it was one of those moments where I thought to myself, I've got one life to live. I've got to be the master of my own destiny. And while I love what I'm doing with the club, I need to have a little bit more autonomy and flexibility in what I want to do. So I decided to monetize all of my incredible connections and start a company, a firm called NHM Connect, which is really built upon building and forging organic and natural relationships and connections. And I've had this unique ability to put organizations or causes or themes together that wouldn't otherwise make sense. And I think that's part of the reason why this conference really resonates so well with me. It's new, it's innovative, it's fresh. It's trying to bring all of the key players within the Ottawa ecosystem to come together to support that next generation. So I've been doing this now for a number of years. And I can't begin to tell you how grateful I am that I had the opportunity to naturally decide that this is my calling, and I would never look back. This is a great gig, and I love what I do.
Natasha talks about it kind of naturally came together. I think that that's such an important thing because, especially for people listening, because I think people think there's this grand idea and this grand plan, and often that's not really how it happens. And when my firm first started, I had been asked like number of times over the years to start my own firm, people saying, you know, I'd love to be your client, I'll be your flagship client, like take me on, start your firm. And when I got asked that, it was the perfect timing. And I was working because I had had those medical issues. I was working at a not-for-profit at the time, kind of part-time after being off on medical leave. And I thought, you know, I could work this part-time job and I could take on that client. And so it started really slow for me over a period of time and eventually build into what I do full-time. But it was having people ask, believing in yourself that you could actually do it, and then be willing to take that risk with that person. And I think that's just an important message for people who also consider opening their business, because it can seem very scary. And just to know that there's not this grand plan that always happens. Like you just have to decide that you're going to do it and take the first step in order to make it reality.
Yeah, it sounds like that. Just sort of step out into the unknown and do your best to make it work. And there's a significant degree of uncertainty there, it sounds like, but both of you have been amazingly successful. So advocacy is clearly a passion for both of you. How does the NextGen event kind of exemplify that passion? And you've clearly got a real interest in empowering youth and empowering women. And marrying that with a passion for advocacy. So how does the NextGen event kind of exemplify that?
Yeah, I think it's the way we've stacked our agenda, and that will soon be released on our website. So this is a little plug for that. But I think the way we've stacked our agenda, the way that we've thematically built the different topics, we want to inspire those young professionals that are in the room to see themselves in some of these causes and some of these speakers. And so one particular session where we're going to be looking at the federal budget cycle, our intention is to dive a little bit deeper into a specific theme or a specific topic where the audience in the room can better understand how advocacy can actually translate and transcend into getting that ask that you have been working a year for in the budget. So it's a bit of the practical. It's also a bit of seeing themselves, in one of these or some of these speakers, hoping that antidotes and some sort of takeaways from the conversation will also trigger something within some of these young professionals to see that it's really within the realm of possibility to believe in a cause and actually get paid to bring it to the fore, that being the Ottawa ecosystem. So that's a little bit of sort of my intention around how the advocacy transcends into how we've built the program. Stephanie, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
and Stephanie, I know you have a real interest in GR campaigns, and you've run some pretty major campaigns. So how is your interest in that, your expertise in that area, kind of exemplified in this NextGen conference?
Right. I first want to layer on a little bit to what Natasha said, and then I'm happy to jump in on that as well. Advocacy for me I think stems from a few things. One is that I truly believe that everybody should have the ability to use their voice and know that they can and that the ability is there. I feel like I grew up in a rural community, in a faith community, and I feel like I was always raised with everybody's voice matters and everybody's opinion matters. And whether you're, the person who's the sanitation worker or you're the CEO, that you should treat people the same and with the same value. And so that uh, supporting the underdog or helping people find their voice and advocate for it is really important to me. And also investing in young people in particular, I think it transcends from people investing in me, because when I came to Ottawa, I knew one person who worked in politics. I didn't have any network. And so it was really so many people along my career path that took the time to mentor me or have coffee with me and build relationships with me that got me to where I am today, which is one of the reasons I so much value giving back and investing in younger people. And I wish I had opportunities like this to network with other people in my industry when I was a young person. And on the women aspect, I think just from where I grew up and the way that I grew up, women's empowerment is really important to me. And I ran for nomination federally to run for politics and lost that nomination. And definitely, it wasn't the reason I would say that I lost that nomination, but really did face a lot of sexism in that experience, which is actually what the podcast was created from. The podcast was created from a, what am I going to do about this? I'd like to actually be active in solving problems. And so that's where the podcast came from. So having a women's panel with Natasha was a natural fit for this environment, given, I've spent my quarter of my desk and spare time away from my kids and work for the last number of years developing this podcast. And in terms of major campaigns, I mean, I think that really just stems from government relations and advocacy doesn't just sit in this little box, right? It sits in the broader work of public affairs. And if you want to be really good at government relations and public affairs, it's not just about advocacy. It has all these bigger implications of things. And we're going to talk about some of those other things like polling and like public research that also come into the work that you're doing. And every little step in advocacy counts, right? Some people have small budgets and small resources, and some people have bigger. And when you do have a big budget to play with, it is so much fun to kind of bring in some of these other resources. And so this is a really great opportunity for people to think outside of maybe their box. Maybe you went to school for polling, maybe you went to school for communications or political science. And in this case, you'll be able to bring some of those things together, and it will make you have better skill sets and be a more well-rounded employee, I think.
That's great. That's really helpful. So no doubt organizing an event like this, Stephanie, you've talked about bringing in all of these diverse voices and various areas of expertise. I'm sure there's been some obstacles and challenges in setting this up and getting it going. Can you talk a little bit about some of those challenges, Natasha?
Sure. As with any new concept, you have to build the proof of concept, right? And so while Stephanie and we pride ourselves on having a great reputation nationally, it's a new concept. So, the advice that we would instill upon our clients, and even, the mentorship that we do to the younger generation, we are living and breathing that mantra. So we've done our research, we've determined, okay, who are some other like-minded partners in this space? And how do we partner, right? We're not in this, there's no ego here. This is to support the younger generation and young professionals. So we have aligned ourselves and really are very grateful that we have an advisory council. So our advisory council really acts as our ears and our eyes on the ground, supporting us with making sure we haven't missed anything. The last thing we want to do is cut anyone else's grass, right? We want to be able to come together and support the whole. So we've forged some great partnerships both with GRIC and the Public Affairs Association, and we're in active conversations right now with 3 academic institutions here in the Ottawa ecosystem to really make sure that it's an inclusive event and that everybody is welcome, that there's opportunities. Our goal here is to be able to gift X amount of tickets to academic institutions. So price is not a burden, price is not an issue for young professionals to be able to come to this. So I think when you're applying a level of philanthropy and a level of community giving, folks realize, okay, this isn't a major for-profit event, corporate Canada coming in. This is two entrepreneurs trying to support the next generation.
That's great. So I know, Natasha, you have a particular expertise in putting partnerships together, getting partners on board with big events like these. Can you talk about some of the partners involved in NextGen? You've mentioned your advisory council. Who else is involved in this?
Absolutely. I'm going to highlight three. And so a little shout out to three of these partners because I work with them quite closely. So the first one is the Westin. Having a background in doing a lot of events in Ottawa, and forging an incredible relationship with the general manager at the Westin Ottawa, Ross Meredith. He's one of our partners here. He believed in what we were doing. He saw that this was certainly something new and fresh. And so the Westin has graciously become a partner of ours. So they're putting their name to our event, which is huge, that a major hotel line is doing that, Marriott, that being the hotel brand. Secondly, the Hill Times. I work quite closely with them through my own work. They are such authentic, wonderful people that I brought this concept to them and they asked, how do we be involved? What can we do? So we have a great partnership with the Hill Times. They're going to be coming out to the event. More to come in terms of additional engagement from them. And then the third one is, for the folks listening, you know that I'm heavily involved in supporting entrepreneurs and small business owners through some of the work that I do at Startup Canada. There's an entrepreneur, his name is Chris, and he's built this incredible, I want to call it a CRM system. And Chris, you may correct me when you hear this and say, why did she say that? But he's built this really cool platform called Polytrack. And it's an opportunity to consolidate all of the information that we as lobbyists have to keep control of and keep record of. It's a great platform to be able to track all your reports, find out what's going on within the House of Commons, following up on committees. And so I wanted to, through my line of work, also support a small business owner and profile the work that he is doing, not just for young professionals to hopefully use his tools, but also some of the larger firms. It's a great system that he's built. And so those are three partnerships that I wanted to highlight because I have that personal relationship with. We have more to come. We're just actually in the process right now of finalizing a few more partners, but I'll turn it to Stephanie because I know that she's also been working on the partnership side too. And I think there's a couple that she'd like to do a special shout out to.
I will also make sure to add for folks that you can check in the show notes for all of the details for the event. And so we will include the website information there and how to find more details about it, how to get tickets, and also the different speakers that we have confirmed so far, which we may talk a little bit more later. And then as well as listing some of the event partners. I loved what you shared about Chris, Natasha, because it is also a story about small business, and we are having a few other folks like that join us over lunchtime at the event to talk about the different offerings that they offer in terms of services to our industry. And so it's been really fun to profile some of those folks as well, us ourselves as small business owners as well. We also have Abacus Data as well joining us in partnership. David is on our advisory committee, but he is also one of our speakers. And so we're really excited to have him come. He's going to be releasing some new data specifically for the event as well. And so we're really excited about that and building in some other partnerships as well. We have Andrea, the CEO of Amplify, who's also joined our advisory committee, and Duke and Castle Marketing supporting us as well, and more to come. So we're really excited about what's happening.
Wow, that's impressive. So on that note then, Stephanie, what are some of the key themes and topics and speakers that attendees can expect to encounter or hear from at NextGen?
Sure. So as I mentioned, David Coletto will be one of our key speakers, which we're really excited about. Natasha has also mentioned that we have a women's panel, which we're also really excited to hear from them and not just talk about, some of the challenges that maybe exist in the industry, but actually to get some advice and some really practical tips that people can take away. And so we're excited to hear from them. And that goes from folks like Elizabeth Roscoe at Rubicon Strategies. We have Denise Seeley, who is from Artful Strategies, joining us, Jennifer Stewart, who is the CEO of Syntech Strategies, and also the co-host of a friendly podcast to us as well, The Honest Talk, and Velma McCall, who's been in the industry for a long time from Ernest Cliff Strategies. We also have other folks joining us on the roster, like Perry Johnson. She is the president and CEO of Colleges and Institutes Canada, and folks like Tyler Meredith, who is well known in the political space and currently the founding partner of Meredith Bozenko Policy Advisors, and many, many more to come. There's lots happening behind the scenes. As we're recording this, it's March and the event is in May. So we're really excited about what's happening.
That is exciting. I've heard a number of those folks speak previously, and they're all really excellent. So you guys have managed to put together a really good lineup. So, look, this is you've said before, this is a novel event. You haven't done it before. So organizing this must have been a bit of a journey of growth personally and professionally. Natasha, can you talk about that? How has this kind of spurred your own development?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think sometimes, and maybe I'm unique in this space, but I think sometimes you wear the hat of your client. And so people know me as X, Y, and Z, and all these different things that I do, they associate me with my client. I'm obviously Natasha, but I think for me, this has been a really great exercise in branching out and showing, look, Natasha doesn't just do this for that client or that for this client, or, on the podium for the economic club. She actually is doing this. And so it's been a really interesting exercise for me to push my comfort level in terms of taking this risk, doing something in-house as opposed to doing something for somebody else. I couldn't imagine doing this with anybody else. Stephanie and I have been friends for a long time, but just we've become so close over this experience, and it's been really great to do it with her. I think the other piece too, Rachel, is having other women champions in the space, and you're one for me, Rachel. Everything you do, I'm in awe. You have such beautiful poise. You're so intelligent, and just being able to have shopped the concept to folks like yourselves in advance of this and getting that extra validation. I think as women, we do need that extra validation sometimes. Not that we have imposter syndrome, but just knowing that the folks that you respect so much in the ecosystem see the value and lend their name to it. You doing this podcast with us, you showing that you respect and are committed to seeing our success. So I think it's been an interesting voyage. I'm still on it. But I think it's certainly opened up my eyes to the realm of possibility. And just even since launching this, there's been some new inbound business in terms of being able to think of new ways to diversify what Natasha Morano and NHM Connect does. So I'm really grateful for it. I'm excited to see, in the next 3 months, what else will transcend. But yeah, it's been a fun ride so far.
That's fantastic. And that's very kind of you to say, Natasha, but honestly, I'm not sure I'd ever have the courage to undertake the kind of entrepreneurial work that both of you are doing. So congratulations to both of you on this. It really is an unusual step, I think. And on that note, Stephanie, what advice would you offer aspiring women entrepreneurs? So young women who want to do what you're doing, aren't quite sure how to start. What advice would you give them?
I think one of the first things that Natasha and I did, and she spoke to this, that can be helpful for folks is if you can find people in your network that you trust and that you really value their opinion, to kind of shop the idea around, to be able to go to people like you, Rachel, who are wise. And we kind of had an initial list of folks that we made to shop the idea and just get some feedback as we were launching. I think that can be a really helpful first step for people. I also would say, I guess, to take some of that with a grain of salt, because I know for me, sometimes I think in an unusual way, I'm quite comfortable with taking very bold moves. When I ran for politics, I quit my job. And, some people told me not to do that. And sure, I lost, but I don't think I would be on the journey I am today if I hadn't have done that. And so sometimes you still need to say yes, as well. And I think that's important for people to think about. And especially for women, I don't think they say yes enough. And so I would encourage them to say yes more and to persevere. Even if I listed like the amount of people that I have invited to be on the podcast and the amount of no's that I've got, like it's a long list. But then I've also had amazing people like former premiers and Olympic athletes and women doing amazing things that are race car drivers or police officers. And if I had given up with some of the no's, it would have stopped after the first couple episodes. And yet here we are today, multiple years later. So I think that message of perseverance and, sure, you might need to adjust things, but being a little bit stubborn about your vision is also really important and something we've had to do for this event as well.
For
Yeah,
sure.
that's great advice. That's great advice, Stephanie. Natasha, how about you? What advice would you offer young women entrepreneurs who are looking to do the kind of work that both of you are doing?
I would say don't let the noise around you affect your dreams. Dream big. I know it sounds cliche, but if you have these thoughts and these ideas and you wholeheartedly see yourself manifesting these things, lean into that. And I think the way in which people can lean into these concepts is it's hard. It's not easy for everybody, right? But just because you have a great dream and a great idea and your particular situation at that moment in time may not be the best for you to act upon it, don't throw it in the garbage. Keep it there. Keep it in your mind. Keep it in your cognition, and surround yourselves with your network, with your safety net, and the folks that you know you can believe in and trust in your concept. And you'd be surprised with what comes back around. And so I think dream big and don't let the noise in this world that we're living in right now affect your ability to fulfill those dreams.
Yeah, that's great advice as well. And I know, Natasha, too, you have an amazing network of relationships. One of the widest networks that I know that I assume has been a great advantage and a great asset for you as well.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, I do. And I think I pride myself on being a genuine, authentic leader, right? Talk is so cheap, especially in Ottawa. And to know me, you know that I'm honest. I lead with integrity. I would never compromise myself or my clients, integrity to land that large deal or whatever it may be. So it's really built on authenticity and being true to myself. And I'm grateful that I've been able to grow that network and that connection base across the nation, because they believe in what I say and I show up, right? If I'm going to commit to something, I show up, and we're showing up full force for this particular conference. So for those of you listening in my network, please show up and support us in what we're doing. But no, I look, at the end of the day, I'm really proud of the person that I am. And I think that people realize I'm a good person. And that goes a real long way, especially in this day and age.
Rachel,
Yeah, 100%.
I
Yeah.
love what you shared, because it's one of the reasons I approached Natasha about this event, because she does have so much expertise on the sponsorship side and with events and the leadership and integrity that you have, Natasha. It's definitely the type of person that you want to be investing in terms of new opportunities. And we talk about earlier about things that we've learned from each other. That's one of the things that has surprised me the most and given me the most personal value in this, is that although Natasha and I both own firms and we do some of the same work, sometimes we do specializations that are a little bit different from each other, but we have learned so much from each other, and getting to spend time with her and learn from her that way has been amazing. And as an owner, something I wouldn't get in my own shop necessarily. And so I have really valued that experience of actually working with another leader on something like this rather than doing it by myself, which I do on so many of my other initiatives. It's just me as the leading head of those other ideas.
Yeah, that's a really good point as well. To have that partnership between the two of you must make things a little bit easier, especially when you encounter challenges, you can kind of work through them together.
I find one of us is always like, this is awesome, we're doing great. And the other one's like, I'm kind of like, I don't know, I need a little bit of encouragement today. But it goes back and forth, and so it's perfect.
It's true. It's well balanced. And I think what's just a little personal antidote on this side is that since Stephanie and I, like I said, we've been friends for a while and we would talk here and there, but since launching this initiative, we have a WhatsApp channel. And it's it's a safe space for us to be able to leave voice notes with different ideas or different things that pop up. And it has been such a therapeutic exercise in all this. I didn't realize how much I was starved for having that camaraderie, because when you're running your own business and you're head down, you sometimes can't see the forest through the trees or have that extra validation that you may need. So that has been, this is a shout out to WhatsApp, because it's been a
How do we
great,
get them as a sponsor?
yeah. Are you listening,
Yeah.
WhatsApp? But it's been so wonderful. And I think even when this conference is over, we're going to keep that in place. It's just two women supporting one another, being able to have that place where we can vent or share crazy ideas.
Ask
And
for
not,
advice.
yeah, exactly. So I'm grateful for that. Thanks for setting it up, Stephanie.
Yeah, those chat groups are an important source of support. I've got a couple of them with friends as well. We've got one called Girl Power, which is like
Oh, I
my
love that.
lifeline when days get really tough. So yeah, good shout out to the chat groups.
Yeah.
So Stephanie, I was gonna ask you guys my last question, which is where can we find the details about the event? How do people sign up? And I'm going to ask you that momentarily, but I just want to come back to your nomination race for a minute because I'm personally interested in this.
Yes.
What made you decide to put your name on the ballot for a nomination race? And
Mm.
look, successful or not, you must have learned a ton from that experience. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was, when we talk about impulsive decisions, it was very last minute decision making, because very unfortunately the MP had died in office. And
Hmm.
so the reason that the riding had opened up to even be an option had come up right away. It was my home riding, and I knew it was a safe seat. And so I knew that whoever became the MP would become the MP for potentially like the next 30 years. So there was a bit of, if I'm going to do it, and this gives me an opportunity to actually be in my home riding and my home, which I love, and there's no jobs like mine where I grew up, and so I've never really had the opportunity to move home. And I realized that I've always been an advocate and a lobbyist, and then I was like, I can take my experience and my drive for that to help my home community, and was really excited about taking that expertise and being able to do it versus, paying clients that I've done. I'm like, I can do this for my neighbors and my community and bring those issues, and I understand how Ottawa works. And I think I just honestly think I just have a bit of a unique ability to jump in without having overthinking it. I think is one of the challenges that really happens, because a lot of people will say in politics, women have to be asked many times in order to run. And I do think that is true, and it's true for most women, but to be honest, nobody asked me. Like, I was just like, I think I'd like to do this. And then I knew
Good for you.
enough people in the system that I did go and then ask some people's advice and what they thought. And therefore just decided it was the right thing to do. And again, I go back to, I think for so many people, this is what I would say. You need to trust your gut in many ways, right? Your gut tells you when things are off or uncomfortable. However, you should not always trust your gut if you're scared, because scared is not a good enough reason to say no. And being uncomfortable is not enough reason to say no. If something's fundamentally wrong in the situation, of course, but just being scared doesn't mean you shouldn't do something. And I think that's something I've held on to and just jump into and talk myself into.
Thanks, Stephanie. That's also really fantastic advice for young women in particular. I think it's even if you're feeling a bit of fear, go for it anyway.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I would
you
have
know,
never run for politics. I would have never started the podcast. I would have never done this event with Natasha. Like,
mhm,
you can't do any of those types of things if you're not willing to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I try and flip the switch in my head about, it's not about what might happen if you do. It's about the fear of not doing it, making that a bigger fear for you than taking the actual step to move forward. And I remember one time literally chasing Jacques Chrétien down the streets of Ottawa to meet him because he had walked past me, and I was like, oh, I want to meet him. So I like ran down the street. I was like, literally, I look like an idiot. Like, anybody walking by is going to be like, that woman is insane. And I was like, I don't really care. Like, I'd rather meet Jean Chrétien than be embarrassed, right? And so trying to flip the switch in your brain a bit in your thinking, I think can also really help you be more afraid of missing on the opportunity than not taking it.
Right. So thinking about fear of missing out rather than the fear of doing something, and maybe being a little bit embarrassed about it in the
Yeah,
process. That's such great advice, Stephanie. Thank you for that.
you're welcome.
So last question, where can people purchase tickets for NextGen? How can they get involved in the event beyond just attending if they want to? Where would we find those details?
So as I mentioned, we have them on the Beacon North website. I will put that all in the show notes so people can find out about that. The event is also on LinkedIn and X, formerly Twitter. And so I will also put that in the show notes so people can follow along. We do have early bird tickets, which are cheaper and come with some special incentives. And those are only on for a period of time. And some of those incentives are based on there's only a certain number of them. And so you want to check it out now and try and get your tickets now because you might miss out on some of those opportunities and the price will go up in the coming months.
Okay, thanks, Stephanie. And did we talk about the date? Natasha, what's the date of the NextGen event?
Oh, I think
we
we
lost
just
Natasha. We
lost
lost Natasha
Natasha. That's
momentarily.
okay. It's
Stephanie, can you
May 21st at the Westin.
amazing. Thank you so much. I really look forward to attending that event. And honestly, the two of you have done such amazing work putting this together. I have no doubt that it's going to be fantastic.
Thank you so
So,
much, Rachel, and
yeah,
thank you for doing this.
thank you.
I'm so excited to have you here, and you interviewing me. It's like feels a bit like a dream. So thank you very much.
I love doing this. I'm happy to host anytime. Thanks for the
Thank you.
invitation.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us on Women Don't Do That. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating or review. Connect with us on Instagram at Women Don't Do That and visit our website www.womendon'tdothat.com for more details. Join our Patreon to support our work. Find all of the links in the show notes. Remember, you have the power to transform your what ifs into let's go. Together, let's redefine your possible. Until next time.